Welcome to the CFO Show. I'm your host, Melissa Howitson, CFO of Venice Solutions. We don't usually think about the finance team first when we think about a professional sports team, but they are an integral part of the organization. In fact, what goes on in the accounting and the planning can often have quite an impact on the rest of the team. I'm joined today by James Suh, CFO of the National Hockey League team, the Florida Panthers. What makes for a strategic and stellar CFO of a popular sports team? We're about to find out. James, thanks for joining today.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm so happy to be here.
So, 11 years with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and now you're just over a year into the new role with the Florida Panthers. Is it safe to say that you're a sports guy?
Yes, I'm a huge sports fan. Growing up, I think in 1992, 1993, with the Blue Jays winning the back-to-back World Series, that really was kind of the moment that I got hooked into sports in general. I never really had, I think, the funds to go to any of the games. I actually never been to a Leaf game until my late 20s. But you can guarantee that I was watching on TV, reading the newspaper. Like one of actually my favorite memories is getting the paper every morning and just reading all the articles, looking at the stats. I was a huge stats guy. So doing that, kind of really built my my love for sports. And being from Toronto, obviously hockey was kind of number one for not only myself, but for my family. And it's funny, actually, when I interviewed for the Leafs, I think what really sealed the deal was I was on an elevator with Cliff Fletcher, who was at the time a special assistant to the president, and just me recognizing him and having a quick chat with him. The interviewer beside me said, "Wow, you really are a fanatic, knowing just the people behind the scenes, not just the players." And I think that really sealed me getting the job at Maple Leaf Sports 11 plus years ago.
What a cool story. Reading all those papers really paid off, didn't it?
Absolutely, and I still, it's unfortunate because we don't get, the actual physical copy of papers now. And I used to love, getting it and opening up in the mornings. But, now I still make sure to spend some time in the morning reading all those articles online.
Well, I was reading the comics, you're reading the sports, and look where you are now. So that's terrific. So, James, I believe this is your first time in the CFO role. Have there been any surprises as you've moved into that role?
Yeah, a couple of surprises. I think first, being an accountant, I'm very much comfortable being behind the scenes and behind a laptop working on an Excel spreadsheet. One of the kind of newer experiences is the importance of being client facing, whether it's internal or external. I've met with so many different partners, so many different lunches, and so many different events that I've had to go to. And that's been a bit of a new experience for me. I think in Toronto, at the level that I was as a VP of finance, I never really got to do that as much. Now it seems like almost every other day I've got a different meeting or a different lunch or a different event in the evening that I need to be a part of. As well as during the game, I'm always walking around, meeting different partners, meeting different fans, and being a bit more client facing. And that's something I really never had to do and never really thought of as part of a finance type of role. But that was something that was obviously very important, especially in this space. And then secondly, I think it's really the nature of the decisions you're making. I think, they're just magnified. You never really get the easy questions anymore. You never really have to, get, you don't get the questions that are high reward, low risk, but you get the questions that are, multiple options, multiple risk scenarios, and having to process a lot of that information in a short amount of time, and ultimately, making decisions that impact both the short-term and long-term nature of our company is something that was new and challenging and exciting at the same time.
You touch on something I think there that it was really resonating even for me, because I'd say that need to be more outward facing. It's not something that always comes naturally for finance individuals. And I think it is something, I don't know about you, but for me, I did have to work at that skill set a little bit, and especially when I had to get up and speak, which used to make me very nervous. And now here I am doing a podcast. Imagine that. But I do think for people in finance seats, whether they are CFO or not, leaning into some of that, even if it's inward facing, working with other teams and taking those opportunities to hone some of those skills that you need to be more outward facing is something I would certainly recommend.
Mhm.
Did it come naturally for you?
No, not at all. Like I'm great. I find myself I'm great with close friends and people I've known for a long time. But what was a bit of a challenge was that quote unquote small talk, right? When you meet someone for the first time and you talk about the weather or you talk about how the sports team was doing or different things like that. That was always a little bit unnatural to me, and I always felt a little bit fake, so to speak. Meeting someone for the first time and acting like, hey, I've got a great relationship with you already, even though I've just met you. Some people are great at it. Some people make you feel at home, from the get go. I always felt a little bit uncomfortable doing something like that, and so learning that skill and learning how to kind of build a rapport right away is something that I've never really practiced or learned, and something that I'm getting to really embrace in this new role.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. James, I'd love to get deeper into better understanding the finances of a hockey franchise. When we think of the Florida Panthers, instantly we think about the team, but there's this finance team behind the scenes, and I'm sure there's a lot that goes on there that we wouldn't really understand.
hmm Yeah, it's actually quite complicated because we've got the NHL players who have their own association. We also have the league that we deal with on a daily basis, and then obviously we have to run with the operations within our own franchise. In the simplest form, we've got ticket revenue, we've got broadcast revenue, both locally and nationally. We've got partnership deals. So whenever you see a logo on the ice or in and around the arena, those are great partners that we've partnered with. And then we've got our ancillary businesses, whether it's food and beverage, merchandise, parking. And then on the operation side or the expense side, we have a whole host of expenses to actually run the event, right? So we have our facility operations, we've got our marketing departments, our sales departments, and so it's a quite a significant and large operation to run a franchise. Florida Panthers in particular, we have about 300 plus full time employees, and then a roster of about 1,000 part timers who help support the games and concerts that happen on a daily basis.
Wow, a lot bigger than I would have expected. We were with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and now you're with the Florida Panthers. So both NHL teams. Are there many key differences that you've seen, or are they mostly similar?
At the base of it, they're obviously quite similar. It's the same hockey that we play. It's the same industry, but the fans, the location that we're in, it's actually quite different. Being from Toronto, I see the passion. I see, you're born into being a Leaf fan, whether you like it or not. It's just kind of permeating throughout the city. In Florida, it's quite different because hockey is still relatively new as a sport. And also being in Florida, there's just so many different things to do. Whether you're going to a beach or going to different events, South Florida is quite a buzzing place to be. And so being part of the Panthers franchise, it's something that we're really trying to embrace the South Florida culture of it, right? So we know we're not a hockey town, at least not yet, but it's something that we're really trying to engage with the fans to say, hey, we're not a hockey culture yet. We're not a hockey town yet, but it's something that we're really going to try to strive for. And we're taking on that kind of feisty underdog mentality so that, when we play against other opponents or when we come to an arena, we know that this is who we are. We're the underdogs, and people don't believe in us. People don't think we have any fans. We don't have anything going around, hockey wise in South Florida, and we're trying to change that perception around the league. In the last few years, I think we've done an amazing job to do that. When you look at some of the podcasts that are out there for hockey or some of the newscasts that show Florida hockey, you can really see that kind of feisty underdog mentality that the team has really taken on, and it's kind of permeated throughout our fan base as well. But the fans are great. Our South Florida fans. The one funny story that I heard, moving down here was the Panthers were everyone's second favorite team, which is kind of funny to hear. But really, we have a lot of snowbirds that come down in the wintertime. We also have a lot of transplants from other states, and so they've already kind of built roots in terms of their own fandom. And so coming down here, they've kind of adopted the Florida Panthers as their as their team of choice. But whenever, let's say the Leafs come by, or the Boston Bruins come by, they always put on that Leaf jersey first. And so they become a fan of that home team first. And then any other game, they'll come as a Panther fan. Now we're trying to change that perception, and we're trying to make sure that, we become their first and only team. And you can kind of see it starting to happen gradually and slowly. When I first started here about a year ago, one of my first games that I attended was a Boston Bruins game. And I would say probably 60-70% of the crowd was Boston fans. Now, when you come in, there's still quite a few Boston fans, and it's probably going to be like that for at least another few years, but you're seeing that percentage dwindle. And now we're seeing 30 to 40% of Boston fans, and the seats are getting filled with, quote unquote, Panther fans now, which is great to see.
I love that idea of the underdog and embracing, hey, this is where we are, and here's the vision of where we want to go, and rallying people around that. I can imagine that must affect even the culture in terms of being a bit more scrappy and how you're thinking about things. And as you see the wins, if it's, hey, it used to be this percent wearing the jerseys and now it's less, we're winning.
Yeah.
Tell me about that in terms of how that affects the culture of the team and in your team in finance.
Oh, absolutely. I think when you look at our employee base and the culture that we've built, I think we embrace that fully. Right, we are the underdog. Right, there's no kind of beating around that bush. Like, we have the lowest social engagement, in the NHL, or one of the lowest social engagements in the NHL. We are a relatively new franchise, and we're selling a product that a lot of South Florida natives just have no idea about. Right, a lot of times they think hockey is kind of a minor sport. It's not really a major league sport because they're so ingrained in football and basketball, and that's kind of the culture that it's been, especially in the Miami and Fort Lauderdale areas for so many years. And so, as an organization, as a finance team, we've really embraced that. We know that, as being a scrappy underdog, you have to fight for that extra inch. You have to fight for everything that you're going to get, and it's not gonna come easy. One of the things that is different from being in Toronto than Florida. You're getting inbound calls, right? People want to go to the games. People want to, get access to tickets. A lot of times people will, they'll drop whatever they're doing if they got tickets to go to a game. In Florida, it's not really like that, right? So we have to be the ones really going out to the streets. We have to be the ones selling and really marketing our product in a very different way, because there's, like I said before, there's just so much to do in Florida. And so to capture that fan just takes a bit more effort. And I think our organization has really embraced that scrappy underdog, really fighting, not really, resting on our laurels, but, looking at the next thing and the next big thing to come.
Well, everyone always loves an underdog story when they see them rise. So looking forward to that. And we'll talk a little later. I think we've already seen some signs of that happening.
Yeah.
As I think then about as you changed from in Toronto, where I imagine predictability of your forecast was pretty set, you had this immense stickiness, to the new environment you find yourself in, how have you had to adapt with that new reality?
That's a great question. In Toronto, because of how sticky the revenue was, it was, I don't want to say it was easy, but it was a lot more predictable to understand where our revenues and where our costs were. Whether you were playing a Montreal team or a Boston team or a Columbus team, we knew that the arena would be packed. And so, forecasting what our costs would be, how many, part-time staff we would need to staff the event, it was quite easy because we knew that everyone would be in the building. In Florida, one game we can have 19,000 people. Another game we can have 16,000 people, depending on the game, the day of the week. It's not as sticky. And so we really have to take a different approach to forecasting and scheduling and different things like that to make sure we're not overstaffed or understaffed depending on a game. And a lot of times, the South Florida culture, I've come to learn, is they're a very late buying crowd as well. right? And so in Toronto, if you're going to go to a game, it's probably 2-3 months in advance. You're buying a ticket and you're excited for a couple of months. In Florida, it's like, hey, what do you want to do this weekend? Let's go to a Florida Panther game. And so a lot of that revenue, a lot of the attendance that we're going to get really kind of jumps up at the last minute. And so to be able to predict that, to forecast that based on historical data, the analysis that we come up with, I think is key to really controlling how we operate. So we're not, like I said, over indexing on how many people are going to come or under indexing. We're also trying to, come up with new and creative ways to get fans into the building, right? And so in Toronto, again, we didn't have to, do, bobbleheads or anything like that. In Florida, that's something that we do because one, fans love it, kids love it, and it's something that really entices people to maybe attend a game when otherwise they may not have. So we've come up with, quite a few marketing campaigns and different things to really help draw the fan interest into the arena. And that's just something that's very different than what we would have had to do in Toronto. The other aspect of it is I think we just have to budget a lot more granular because of that. And so, when we do budget on a per game basis. We bucket our games into various tiers to really help forecast what the year is going to look like. And then based on win streaks or losing streaks and different things like that, our forecast is pretty uh, it's pretty fluid, right? So we do forecast quite a bit, and the numbers that we start with at the beginning of the year could vary quite differently at near the end of the year, depending on how a team plays.
Yeah, I can imagine that you need a lot more operational agility in that environment in terms of looking forward and reacting to what you're seeing as you go.
Right, absolutely.
You joined the Florida Panthers in 2023, which was right during their rise through the ranks and ultimately culminating in a spot in the Stanley Cup that year. What was that like, or how did that impact what you saw operationally and in your finance team?
It was quite an experience. When I left the Leafs, I believe the Leafs were second in the conference, or maybe second in their division, and the Panthers were right near the bottom, which was actually quite surprising because the year before they had won the President's Trophy, being the top team in the league. And so moving from a team that was gearing up for the playoffs to a team that potentially was looking to not make it in, it was a little bit of an adjustment for me, to be quite honest. But I will say, when I first started, the Panthers, I was looking at the odds because, again, I'm a stats nerd. I was looking at the odds. The Panthers had about a 5% chance of making the playoffs when I started in early January. And then we went on this magical run, ended up squeaking into the playoffs by 1 point. Had a lot of luck along the way because we had to have a couple of teams lose and a couple of different things that were out of our control happen. But then we squeaked into playoffs. We ended up playing Boston, who was historically one of the best teams ever. They had the most points in the history of the NHL. No one gave us a chance. And so kind of getting into that first round of playoffs with Boston was just unbelievable. And then we were down 3-1 to come back and beat them in 7 games. Was just, one of the most unbelievable experiences that I've ever had. And then to top that off, the next round was against Toronto, my former team. Being able to go to Toronto, experience that, those games, and to beat them in the second round was just unbelievable as well. And then obviously, making it to the finals was just something that I'll never forget, and something that really helps you, really strive for that again because you want to get back there. You really want to finish, that kind of. Progress in the journey that you've started. So hopefully we can get to that this year. But yeah, it was just an unbelievable, kind of first 6 months into the role to go from, not even being, anywhere close to the playoffs to culminating with the Stanley Cup final appearance. It was just unbelievable.
What a great story, and what a ride that must have been for you as you were just getting your feet wet in this new role and seeing all this happening around you. Let's talk a little bit about that momentum that comes from winning, because I can imagine that for your team and for everybody involved, that is a special thing. And there is a real serious momentum that starts to pick up when you're in that moment. And I think that's important for finance teams as well. What are your thoughts on that and how it changed things?
Oh yeah, winning is everything. I think winning, for a sports team in particular, if you're not winning, the fans aren't engaged and the fans don't come out, particularly in Florida. And so winning kind of sets the stage for everything. And it's had such an immense impact on our future projections just from that one kind of run that we went on. Um, the funny thing is when we go out with our kind of renewal pricing with our season seat holders, we actually go out in January, February. So at that point, we had no idea we were going to even be in the playoffs. So our revenues for next year, particularly on a membership basis, was kind of set already. We already set prices for next year, and again at that time we weren't even in the playoffs. So on that side, we'd already kind of forecasted ahead. We already went out. But what it does do is it just kind of builds that demand. And so, making it to the playoffs, the interest for new members and for new partners to capture that time from a fan to come to a game, to make that commitment to come is a big commitment. And so to put a product on the ice that really people can come and enjoy and have that fan experience has just been it's night and day by having a great product on the ice.
People must have been so happy that they pre-bought those seats last year, and then look at where that went, because that would have cost a lot more had they known.
And
So
that's actually a very differentiating strategy that we have in Florida that we didn't have in Toronto. In Florida, because we are looking for that long term investment, we do go out with quite significantly discounted playoff pricing to make sure that we've got those membership bases secured for the following year. So in other cities, you'll find during playoff time, prices are inflated quite a bit to like a regular season game. We don't do that as much in Florida. We really use that as an opportunity to buy that investment back into the organization for the following year. So we have very different playoff strategies, which was something that was different and something that I've learned during my time here.
interesting. So then, how did the experience of that winning and momentum in 2023 change things as you were looking ahead to 2024? You mentioned more interest in the business. And of course, now you've got different variables when you're thinking about planning and forecasting. What did you have to do different?
Yeah, so we plan a couple times during the off season. So our off season starts really at the end of the last game, and we don't finalize our plans until right before the season starts. And the reason we do that is just during the off season there's a lot of movement. So whether we trade a player or whether we sign a new free agent that might have a big impact on team performance, we account for all of that. And so in and around May, we come up with a preliminary budget of what we think next year is going to look like. And then we have the summer. Once we get the schedule from the league, once we know which teams we're playing on which day, we'll have an opportunity to adjust what we think our revenues are going to look like. Because a game on Saturday in December versus New York is revenue wise is much better than a Tuesday game versus Columbus, let's say. And so getting that schedule, understanding what kind of impact that might have on our ticket sales and different things like that, it really has a big impact. And so we have an opportunity to reforecast and replan where we think we're going to go. And then in and around September, right before the first preseason game, we'll finalize what that budget looks like, and then we'll go out and execute.
Like every business, there's always this push and pull between investing now for the future versus also making sure that you're minding the finances as you go.
Yeah.
And so the short-term, long-term thinking now. I know there's salary caps in the NHL, so there's some constraints there, but how do you think about maintaining that balance as well for a hockey franchise?
For us, we always have a long term kind of outlook on everything. Whether it's a small or large investment, everything has to be for the long term. We know in hockey everything is cyclical. You're going to have a year where you might make it to the Stanley Cup Finals, and you might have a year where you're at the bottom of the league, not even pushing for a playoff spot. And so we know that, and things can change in a heartbeat. Injuries and different things like that happen all the time, just due to the nature of the game. And so we want to make sure that we're not just maximizing our revenues just because a team is playing well, but really building that investment into a long-term future and long-term potential for anything that we do. So whether it's with a partner or whether it's with a fan that's signing up to be a member, that's something that we take into account, and we don't want to just price gouge just because the team played well the year before, because we know how quickly that could potentially turn around and how quickly we could lose a fan by doing so. So everything we do really does have a long-term kind of focus to it, and we do make long-term investments, whether it's to the arena, to the team. We want to make sure that we build kind of a model that can replicate success, even if we may not be winning on the ice.
Now, moving a little bit over into the culture and team dynamics, are there any parallels that you draw when you think about the team and what it takes there and your own team in finance?
Yeah, it's that's a great question. In hockey, you have your four lines typically, and they all play very different roles, right? So your first and second line are kind of your skilled guys looking, called upon to try to score goals and create offense. Then you got your fourth and third lines who are more kind of your grinder lines who really kind of set the stage, try to build momentum, maybe get into a scrap or two if needed. But they all play such a pivotal role, and I really can translate that to finance. Not everyone plays the same role. Not everyone has the same job. Not everyone has the same experiences or expertise. But everyone is just so important. And if you're not working kind of cohesively, a team just won't be successful. And so I really take that to heart in our finance team. We've got some guys who are just so experienced, just know how to work an Excel spreadsheet and build whatever model you can. Then you have those who are that are just great with data and just can handle numbers, and so you have a lot of different experiences, but it all kind of needs to come together to build kind of a successful finance department. And so hockey, I believe has a lot of similarities to kind of building a successful team.
James, you live in a world where there's probably a lot, it feels like a roller coaster, I imagine, where these ups and downs of winning and losing and how it's going would have an even outsized impact on culture and team. Tell us a bit more about that.
Being part of a sports organization, you're obviously a huge fan of the team that you work for. And so everything that we try to do and everything that we kind of live and breathe is about winning. And so, the unfortunate thing is there can only be one winner in any given year. In my 11 years with the Leafs, we were never really able to get too far into the playoffs. And so it really has a big impact that you really need to kind of draw back out. And so, I've been through a lot of experiences where, just the excitement of getting into the playoffs and to be leading in a round, only to kind of fall a little bit flat and get upset or lose in a game seven. It has such a big impact on the culture of a team, right? Because the next day you're going into the office and everyone is just downtrodden. No one's really talking. Everyone's really, a little bit sad. And to really build that momentum back up for the next year can be quite tough to do. And we've had, unfortunately with the Leafs, quite a few experiences like that. But on the flip side, with the Raptors, culminating with that NBA championship in 2019, you can really see just, everything gets easier, everything gets lighter, the work isn't as hard, and the hours aren't as long when you're winning. And so really working in sports is quite interesting because, you kind of live and die by how the team is performing, and it really changes everything. And it happens multiple times in a season, almost multiple times in a week, where a long winning streak or a losing streak has not only revenue impacts. But also the morale of the team is quite different. So I think as a leader, it's our job to make sure that through the highs and lows, that we're keeping the team motivated, we're keeping the team kind of invested in making sure that we're building the right things and doing the right things. And when things get tough, when deadlines start hitting, it's always easier when you're winning and you're always doing with the smile on your face. But when things do get tough and you're going through a rebuilding season, or you're looking at numbers that are not quite hitting, making sure you're motivating the team enough to continue going. And that's always been a bit of a challenge working in sports because I imagine it's quite different in a lot of other industries. But we really do live and breathe by the performance of the teams.
And one word that's going through my head as I'm listening to you there is passion, because I can imagine it's really important that your employees are all very passionate about what they do. And I think that's true of all businesses, that you need employees to have us bring a certain amount of passion every day. But I can imagine that that's really amplified in your industry in particular.
If you're not passionate about sports, it's probably not the best place to be because the hours can be long. You're typically working an 8 to 4, 8 to 5 kind of day, and then a lot of times we're here for all the games as well. And there's, we've got 41 home games, not including playoffs. We've got over 50, 60 concerts that happen on a yearly basis. So there's just a ton going on, and so a lot of times you're called to be here long hours and to really pivot and to work on things in a very and not in a systematic way, just because of how fast and how fast paced it is. And so, if you're not passionate about the sport, if you're not passionate about the team, it could be draining. But if you are, it just becomes it really doesn't feel like work, and you really feel like you're being part of something and building towards a championship.
Now, you touched on the Raptors, which are also part of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and the victory there. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about what that was like, and being along for that ride.
Oh, that was unbelievable. It's probably the highlight of my career is winning that championship. The Raptors, for a few years going into it, we're always kind of close. We always met LeBron in the playoffs, and he was always kind of one upping us. But that one year with Kawhi coming in, which was a very risky move to begin with, because we were trading DeMar DeRozan, who was kind of a Raptor lifer and loved the city, embraced kind of basketball in Canada, to trade him for Kawhi. I got a lot of texts from friends and family saying, what are you guys doing over there, getting rid of DeMar? But making kind of moves like that culminated in a championship. You can really see just kind of what goes on in a general manager's mind in building a team. And personally, it was just an unbelievable experience. Seeing those games, seeing the crowd get into it, seeing just the coverage that it was, the parade. I think we had like 2 million people at the parade. It was just unbelievable, and something that again, being in sports, something that you kind of you chase that feeling every single time, and so it's something that hopefully we can bring to Florida this year.
Well, I certainly hope you can as well. So, wishing you lots of luck, James, and excited to see what comes next for the Panthers.
Thank you.
Love those parallels. Now, you've been there, it's just over a year now.
Yeah.
What would be some of the key changes that you would have implemented since you've been there?
All the while the team was performing well, I had a couple of really key priorities kind of coming into it. The first one was just kind of shoring up our financials. We really didn't have a monthly reporting cadence at all. And so we didn't close month ends on a timely basis. Really, month end was let's close it whenever we needed to, whenever ownership wanted to get an update on numbers. But for me, coming from Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, where there was this strict and really time sensitive reporting deadlines that we have, particularly with our ownership with Bell and Rogers, bringing that to the Florida Panthers was something that was a real priority, and one of the keys to my placement here is to bring that sort of kind of rigor into this company. And so I kind of looked to bring in a 5-day close. Previously, I think we were close to a 45-day close. And so within the first couple of months, we implemented a 5-day close, and we really we prioritize speed versus accuracy, particularly in the first couple of months, because we just wanted to get into the rhythm of closing. We could be wrong on the numbers, and there would be adjustments, but we really wanted to make sure that at least we were closing, and we were closing our books. We were reviewing numbers on a particular day and making sure financials went out. With the caveat to our ownership and the president and CEO, that numbers may be off, but we want to get at least into the rhythm of providing a monthly number, not 2 months after the fact. And so that was a priority that I really came into, and I'm proud to say, within the first 2 months, our team really rallied behind that, and now we've been going a full year with 5-day closes, that are becoming more and more efficient, more and more accurate. And it's really kind of changed the way that we've done our business kind of throughout the company, because now we can provide, monthly reports to every department, to every VP that works here, so that they can course correct or they can pivot based on numbers that they're going to receive on a timely basis, and not waiting till 2 months to see, how things are trending. So that was a big change that we were able to implement right away. And then the second thing is we're working through a 5-year or 4-year strategy plan right now that's really involved the entire company. I think previous it was really a couple of people just kind of figuring out where the company would go. But now we've really taken a wholesome or a fulsome approach to strategy planning, and involving as much of the business as possible to really see where we want to take this company. And that starts with our ownership group and our president, setting that vision, setting where our long-term goals are, and really building that strat plan out. So that's something that we've undertaken, and we started that in October, and it'll culminate with a strat plan deck in March that we're going to present to ownership. So that's an exciting time, and we got a ton of buy-in from everyone within the company. So it's been going really, really great so far.
Sounds like you've had a busy first year, going from 45 days to 5 days. That's a great accomplishment. And I love how you did that by, at least temporarily, letting go of some of the accuracy for speed to help show the team a way to do that. Great tip there. Does anything get easier now for you after getting some of that momentum under your belt last year?
Oh, absolutely. A lot of things get easier. One of the interesting things that I've noticed when I first started, we went through a couple of changes, on from an organizational standpoint, and we were hiring, and we really weren't getting a lot of applications for roles that I thought, particularly in Toronto, we would get hundreds, if not thousands, of applications for any role. But here we were getting maybe 10, 15 applications for any given role. But now that we started winning, I think, hockey culture is kind of growing in South Florida. We're really seeing an uptick in interest in working for the Panthers, and that's been eye-opening. We have a rollout right now that we're hiring for, and we had over 300 applications within the first week for a role that last year probably would have had 10. So you can really see, just people wanting to be part of this organization, people wanting to be part of sports, people wanting to be part of a winning culture, and it's really had a big impact. It allows us to make sure that we're not choosing a candidate just because of lack of applications, but really finding great candidates and great people to work within the Florida Panthers organization. So that's been a huge change and a quick turnaround, which is fantastic.
Now, one last question here for you. So, if you had to give just 2 pieces of advice to CFOs who may find themselves in an underdog or need to rebuild situation, what would that be?
One of the great pieces of advice that I got when I first started at MLSE was the term "master the mundane." And what that really means is, really understanding your numbers and being foundational in the numbers that you have, because that really is the foundation to everything that we do. And so, with the Panthers, we're like I said, we're scrappy and we're underdogs, but we also need to make sure we get the answer right the first time, right? We don't have the resources or quote unquote the money to have redos or retakes in a lot of the investments that we make. And so understanding the numbers and really, getting to the core of what the issue is and what we need to do is really important. And so whether that's closing our month on a timely fashion, or doing our reconciliations on a monthly basis, doing all of that really helps give us the ability and the confidence that the decisions that we're going to make are the correct ones, again, from a long-term perspective. And so mastering the mundane, sometimes it's not as exciting as some of the other things that we get to do as finance individuals. But I think that was a big piece of advice that I've really taken with me to this role.
Excellent. Great piece of advice. Now, James, really appreciate all these ideas that you've shared with us and helping us better understand things in the world of hockey and finances. Whenever we have a guest on the show, we do have 2 rapid fire questions that we like to ask. So are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. First one is, what is the best piece of business or leadership advice that you've received?
I would say is get the story straight. A lot of times, we get inundated with different numbers and different opinions and different analysis. And so you can tell a story probably 10 different ways and get to 10 different answers. But my old CFO at Maple Leaf Sports, she would always tell me, get the story straight. Like, what is the right story? And make sure that you tell that story. You're not trying to manipulate. You're not trying to coerce someone into a decision, but really we're here to tell the right numbers and tell the right numbers in the right way, and also to tell it efficiently.
Great advice. And the next question is, what is a book, and it can be business or personal, that has had an impact on you?
The last book I read was a book called Necessary Endings, which was a great book. It was a book about pruning and making sure that you're able to cut things off when you need to, and coming into this role, coming into a new country, coming into a new environment, learning what you can and can't take on was something that was really great to kind of learn and to read about. But I'd say probably the most recent book that I've read that was the most impactful was a book called The First 90 Days. And that was a great book because I haven't really had a new job in 11 years. And so coming into a new role, really embracing a role and figuring out what you need to do in that first few months of a role, that really helped kind of set my mind right. So to not take everything on and try to overpromise and underdeliver, but really understand what you're here to do and how to set your mind and set your priorities straight to really set yourself up for success in the long term.
Sounds like a great book, and sounds like timely for you to read that as well. So thank you so much, James, for being on the show today. I've really appreciated it.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
If you'd like to learn more about today's topic, please visit the links in the show notes. And if you like what you heard, please leave us a review on one of the streaming platforms. We love to hear from you, and it helps listeners to find the show. And remember to subscribe wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. You don't want to miss an episode. For the CFO Show, I'm Melissa Howitson. Until next time.